You're listening to Best Muscle Video Radio.
We're riding down the boulevard. We're riding through the dark night. We're half a tank and empty heart.
I wake up in the mornings and I actually do a few things around my apartment, like, whatever needs to be done, whether that's hang laundry or do dishes or whatever. And, I usually, that's my morning routine. That's how I get started. And then I cook my breakfast, which is egg whites and oats. And I actually take that with me to go do my fasted cardio. And so I'll do my fasted cardio, and then it's like 35 minutes. I'll do that, and then I'll go out to my car real quick and eat my breakfast, and then run back inside and train. And then I go do my errands or whatever I need to do, and then, I get ready for work, and then I go into work and work all night, and then I come home, and usually I try to get into bed pretty early so that I can wake up and do it all again the next day. If I have school, then that's a different story, but on the days that I don't have school, then that's what I do. But when I do have school, I have to hit my fasted cardio before class, and then I go into my classes and try to get all my homework done at school, because I know once I get home, I'm gonna get sidetracked, I'm gonna wanna do other things. So I usually just do that at school, and then I come back and get ready for work and then go to work. And sometimes, I will train late at night after I get out of work. I prefer not to, because there's no energy at the gym, there's nobody there. But if you have to get it done, then you have to get it done. And sometimes things come up in the day and I don't have time to get to the gym like I had planned on doing. There's different things, different places close at different times, so there's things that I have to do. And so that is something that's a necessity. I'll get that done, and I know I can always hit the gym after work. But usually I always do that right before work, and then I go get ready for work and kill it.
Recently, have you been working on something specific with your body that you're trying to bulk up on, or
yes,
get smaller? Or? Actually,
I am. I naturally have a pretty easily developed lower body. So genetically, the women in my family, they do have bigger lower bodies, which it can be an advantage or it can be a disadvantage. When I first started training, I was like, man, I just love those girls in the gym that have that nice hamstring quad separation. It's like, I would love to have that. But I was like, man, I don't know how I'm ever going to get that, because I was just built thicker on my lower body. Once I trained it right and I built from my already foundation that I had, it actually, it looked better in the end than I feel like if I didn't have that. So I'm very grateful that I do have the good genetics on my lower half, although I have worked incredibly hard. Probably the hardest on any body part I have worked on my legs, because developing them, especially in bikini, is incredibly important. That's the main focus. Is, well, of course, your stage presence and your face and the way you carry yourself and whatnot. But people think bikini, they think booty, they think legs. So that's been a really huge thing for me to develop and make sure that it just comes out perfectly. Although I have also been really trying to develop my shoulders, getting that nice rounded cap, and whenever I turn to the side to have that cut, that's very important. Symmetry is, I think, the number one thing that the judges look for. And anytime I look at anybody on stage, that is definitely the thing that I look for, because nobody wants to have a nice lower body and have no upper body, or vice versa. So I always say, people kind of joke about those guys that don't train legs, but I think it's exactly the same, only for women, vice versa. Many girls will just go into the gym and just train legs or just train their lower body, but they don't focus on their upper body. And that's something that I've never wanted to do, especially because I did have that advantage genetically with my lower body. I do want to focus on that, and I do want to use that as my advantage. But at the same time, I do want to focus on my upper body. So I want to go on stage, I want to have a killer lower body and just as good as an upper body, and just wow the judges. And there's so much that I'm going for this year, and I just have really high hopes. I'm not giving up. I'm so ecstatic to compete again, because I really miss the stage. Nothing compares to the feeling that I get whenever I walk out. it's almost like everything becomes silence when it's really not. It's probably louder than it has been when somebody comes out onto stage. But all the focus is on you. The lights are beaming up. Whenever I was training for my first show, I had no idea what to expect. I was walking into the competition completely blindfolded. I had some people that would point out to me, this is what's going to happen, this is what to expect. But until you do it yourself, you have absolutely no clue what it's really like. And so whenever I was training for my first show, that's something that I will never forget. Sometimes I listen to songs that'll come on the radio, and I remember I would listen to that song over and over again whenever I was prepping for my first show, and it just brings me back. And I remember walking out onto stage, and the lights were just on the stage so bright. It was like that was all I saw. All I could think about was my posing routine and what I had done to get there, and wow, it's finally here, like this is it. And it was just super overwhelming feeling, but I did pretty well for my first show. And I mean, that's just a weekend that I'll never forget. It's something that I'm always going to cherish because it was just amazing. It opened my eyes to everything. I learned how shows really take place, how they appear to the audience, how they appear backstage. I was backstage. I'd go out there and I would compete on stage. I'd go sit with my family and friends and look at the other competitors as they come out on stage, and just seeing them, the way that they were awarded, the way that they were presented, how they carried themselves on stage. You can automatically tell who's been doing this and who hasn't. And that's something that I just fell in love with. And that's one reason why I love competing. People ask me all the time, why did you start competing? And I started competing because I played so many sports, a million different sports. And I didn't just try them out. I would play them for a couple of years, and I got the feel for what I was really good at, what I was into. I've always been athletic. People ask me, how long you've been training? How long have you been working out? I've always been athletic, but competing is completely different, because once I graduated, I was really looking for my competitive edge again. And I like to train, I like to work out, I like to do anything active. But then again, I'm also super competitive, not just physically, but in every aspect of my life. Whether that's work, whether that's school, whether that's anything, I always set a goal for myself, something that I want to achieve, something I want to reach, something I'm going to obtain. And that always sets a higher standard and a higher bar for myself. And I love that because I get so much more done. And I mean, I have friends that compete, and they were like, Ashley, you need to compete. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if that's really the thing for me. I like to train, but I don't know. I'll think about it. So I started looking at pictures online, these different winners, and I was like, man, she has a beautiful body. Perfect. Symmetry, just beautiful. I would love to look like that. So I was like, well, you know what? I've tried everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start training for the show, see how I like it. I like to try everything out. So I started training for the show, and I actually went 20 weeks without one cheat meal. People, when I tell them that, they think it's crazy. Can you imagine eating consistently the same foods for 20 weeks? I didn't season them. I baked everything. It was just super simple, and it was so bland, and it almost got to the point where I didn't care to have a cheat meal because that's all I knew, And it was just forever that I trained for that show, and I came out on top. I did exceptionally well for my first show, and I was very surprised. I remember I placed 4th, and first in teen, but 4th in the open category. And I remember I was actually kind of upset that I placed 4th. I was so hard on myself. Could have done better. Well, at the end of the day, I was super happy to take home 4th, and I kind of took a step back and I realized, look, not always going to be first place in everything. That's okay. But I started from nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. I came in here, all of these competitors, there was so many, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I placed 4th. And I was very happy with the package that I brought, and I continue to build from that. And it's something that I appreciate. And so I I just knew as soon as that weekend was over, I knew that that was definitely the sport for me. And it's so different than anything. It's an individual sport. It's not a team sport. I do work well with teams, although knowing that I did it all myself and I'm the only person to blame if anything doesn't come out how I want it to, it's all on me. So I'm a very big self-motivator. I can motivate myself to do just about anything. And it could be the worst thing that you could think of. It could be the best thing you could think of. As long as I get my mind set on it, I know I can do it. And I think that's something that's extremely important, is self-motivation. Because there's not always going to be people there to motivate you and to tell you, look, you have to keep going. You have to push yourself. That's not always going to be there for you. What happens whenever, like me, I just moved here to Fort Worth area, and I left everything. I left my family, my friends, my hometown, my school, my gym, my comfort zone. I completely dropped. And then I don't regret it. I still go back home and I still see them, and I actually appreciate that time spent with them more, and I realize how valuable it is. But I came out here really in the split second and just dropped everything, and I moved out here, and I knew what I was going to do. I knew that I was going to come out here for school, and I knew that I wanted to pursue something, and I wanted to kind of spread my wings a little bit and grow as a person. And I've always been pretty mature for my age, but I really learned a lot about myself and a lot about how much of a self-motivator I am when there is nobody around to push me. Because my dad, I know he will hold me accountable to anything. He's always making sure I'm doing good in school, in work, in every aspect of my life. He calls me on a regular basis and he asks me, how's everything going? How's school? How's work? Are you doing good? What's going on with you? What's up? And he definitely is somebody that holds me accountable in every aspect. And so knowing that he was there for me whenever I did live back in San Antonio and back home, he was always there. And when you do have a backbone to kind of fall back on, and knowing that he's there to help me if I ever do need it, that's very comforting. But to really take it upon myself and grab every single responsibility, I told him, I want to take over all my bills. I want to take over everything that you can think of. And I want to know that I did it myself. That's way more rewarding. And knowing he's still there, even though it's a 4.5-hour distance, he's still there for me. But coming out here, living my life myself, and doing things that I decided on, things that I've worked so hard for, it's very rewarding. And I've grown up a lot more as a person, and I've really realized what it's like to be a self-motivator, because he's not standing by my side pushing me in the right direction. He's there, but he's not right next to me. He's there, but I'm out here by myself. So that's when you really learn how bad you want something, is when nobody's around to push you. And self-motivation, I can't talk about that enough. It's just the biggest thing for sure.
How do you keep a good head on your shoulders?
Well, that's a good question. Ever since I was a little girl, I've always been, I guess you could say, kind of like a goody two-shoes. I never broke the rules growing up. I partied and, I did things I knew I shouldn't have, but all throughout school, I never broke the rules. I always tried to do what I was supposed to. And at home, I never wanted to get in trouble. And I was just always wanting to be picture perfect. And I know nobody's perfect. But I always wanted to be the best version of myself, as long as I can remember. And so keeping a good head on your shoulders, I think for me, the hardest thing is I'm very hard on myself. So holding yourself to a very high standard is absolutely the biggest thing. If you don't have high standards, you're not going to achieve high things. I always try to set my finish line a little bit farther. because if I don't achieve every single aspect of that, which in my mind I tell myself I'm going to, but if I don't, I still did very well, you know? So keeping a good head on your shoulders is really just living a healthy life. Having a routine, I think, is the biggest thing for me. Knowing what I'm going to do the next day. I just bought a planner for this year, and I'm super ecstatic about it because I just wrote everything in there that I need to get done. And so on my days off, you know, when I do have time, I just check it off, and I get stuff done. If I don't write it down, it doesn't get done. So keeping a good head on my shoulders is just keeping myself in a routine, keeping a clear mindset, not letting myself get too hard on myself, because I can really just kick myself in the butt sometimes and be like, you know what, why didn't I do this? But I have to consider the other things that's going on. So don't be too hard on yourself, but at the same time, keep yourself held at a high standard, because you're just as good as you think you are. So, I mean, mentally, it's a challenge. I don't have good days all the time. Nobody does. So I've had rough days. I've had extremely rough days. But knowing that it's not always going to be like that is very comforting, because it's just a bad day. There's always tomorrow. There's always a way to make up for it. So that's the best thing I can say. And something that I've actually noticed that helps me out a lot whenever it comes to routines is setting goals. I think especially in January, everybody tries to set different resolutions. I think for about 3 years, I made my resolution to get in the best shape of my life. Every year I would set that, and I would fall short. Every year I kept coming back, making that my New Year's resolution. And I finally did it. But I think the biggest thing is, don't give yourself too much time to accomplish this goal. People say, okay, so this is my New Year's resolution. This is what I want to achieve for 2016. I want to get in perfect shape in my mind. I want to be in perfect shape for 2016. But you're giving yourself a whole year to get in shape. You know what I mean? So what I like to do is I'll set myself a goal every single week. So this week, I'm going to work really hard on lifting 5 more pounds on everything. This week, I'm going to be 10 minutes early to everything that I do. This week, I'm going to do this, you know. So it's giving myself a week time frame instead of a year. And that's what I like to always tell people, and that's personally helped me out a lot. I remember when I first started training, I actually wrote down January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, you know, like every month. And I would write, okay, this is what I want to focus on for this month. Although I have all my other goals, this is my main focus. For the next month, this is my main focus. And so breaking it up like that really gave me more options and more different goals to work with. And I didn't give myself a huge time frame, because when you do, you give yourself too much leniency, you know, to slack. So I like to set a goal every single week, and I usually always reach it. And then the next week I go for something better, and I get a lot done. So that's the best thing best advice I could give somebody for reaching goals.